Greetings, friends, fellow patriots, fellow citizens, and even non-citizens from around the world who tune into this podcast at WeThePeopleConvention.org and on Rumble and Roku and everywhere else, now on YouTube as well. Welcome to all of you to this week's edition of the We the People Convention weekly news and opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. I'm the host of this podcast. I'm also the president of the We the People Convention organization. And this podcast and our website and our text messages and our emails, which you should all be getting, and our donations to other conservative groups around the nation are all paid for through the generous donations of the people who have given to our organization for the last 15 years to help in our fight to protect and defend your and my individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Thank you. We thank all of our donors for the past 15 years for your commitments to our cause. And by making those commitments, you've made our success possible. So thank you to them, to the donors. To those of you who are just joining us for the first time, and we know there are more of you because we are spending some money advertising on Rumble, and now we're advertising on YouTube. We're going to see how that works out. Welcome to you. You're going to find this podcast is a weekly news summary podcast where we either get rid of the propaganda or at least expose it and put it in context with real news that affects your and my individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. That's what we're here to discuss. But we're not just here to listen. We're here to act. I will ask you in our podcast to do things where there's an opportunity for us to make a difference. I will point that out to you, and it's incumbent upon you to act. That's what it's all about. Freedom is not free. It has to be earned and it has to be defended. And boy, we've learned that the hard way in the last 20 years. So now we have to keep doing that. And this podcast will help guide you in that. And that's what I hear from those of you who write to us. And we do encourage you to write to us at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. You say, hey, listen, the news is coming at me so fast, I just can't consume it. I can't keep up. And yeah, we're definitely in Trump time because we can barely keep up here at We the People Convention, even with those of you feeding us articles and stories we can use. But it's just impossible for the average person to keep up. And so you come to this podcast once a week to say, okay, what did I miss? What's important? And that's our goal. That's what we try to do here. And I hope you'll enjoy this podcast, and we thank you, all of you, for joining us. So let's get on, with what's going on. And I think the biggest story is this story. Uncharted territory. For the first time, 50% say America is headed in the right direction. Now you may go, wow, only 50% think we're headed in the right direction? But because of the polarization of our nation and because of the ideology, the political ideology that is prevalent in too much of our nation, it's almost impossible. Matter of fact, it is impossible to get more than 50% of the people thinking we're headed in the right direction until now. I'm going to share this with you because I think it's really significant. And this was written by Newt Gingrich. So let me read this to you. President Trump's stunning poll numbers. Despite the turmoil and anxiety being spread by the country's elites and the propaganda media, the American people are rendering a remarkably positive judgment about President Donald J. Trump's second term. As Rasmussen Reports pollster Mark Mitchell recently posted on X, holy crap, it happened. For the first time in our polling history, a majority say the country is on the right track. Don't F it up, Republicans. To put this in context, in November of 2024, Real Clear Politics, which they track all the major polls and then they average them. So a lot of people use that because it's averaging, but it doesn't work because so many of the leftist polls are just phony as can be, as we all know. Real Clear Politics reported the results were 26% said we were on the right track and 63% said we were on the wrong track. This is right before the November 2024 election. 63% of people said we were on the wrong track because we were. And because this podcast and the conservative media had finally broken through to get the message out about the truth and the fake news because of Donald Trump's attacks on them and our attacks on them, your pointing out the lies that they did were just, completely ineffective in pushing propaganda. 63% said we're on the wrong track right before the election. Going from 37 points, going from down 37 points to up 1 point in the first 4 months of a new administration is an astounding achievement. And this is not just one survey. Matt Towery of Inside Advantage noted that its poll has President Trump at 55% approval. Rasmussen report had him at 52% approval. Towery told me he believes these numbers are within each other's margins of error. Yet another poll, the Democracy Institute, reported that President Trump has a 6-point approval advantage of 52% to 46%. Even more striking, the poll showed 51% of President Trump felt President Trump was fixing America, while only 37%, close to the base of the Democratic Party, disagreed. As Democracy Institute founding director Patrick Bresham said, a massive margin of 14 points, America says he is fixing America. So 3 different polls show extraordinary positive results for President Trump. Of course, they did not make the front page of the New York Times or the Washington Post. They did not become breaking news on NBC, CBS, or ABC, and forget about MSNBC and CNN. It doesn't matter. The elites are content reassuring each other that everything is terrible and President Trump is doomed to fail. Unfortunately for them, and fortunately for you and I and the country, the American people increasingly disagree because we see the truth. We see the truth, okay? So this story came out. Consumer confidence for May was much stronger than expected of optimism of trade deals. Consumer optimism got a much-needed boost in May on hopes for trade peace between the U.S. and China, according to a survey Tuesday. The Conference Board's consumer index leaped to 98%, a 12.3-point increase from April, and much than the Dow Jones consensus estimate of 86%. So the Wall Street types were saying that the consumer confidence in the economy would only be at 86% because of Trump's tariffs, and it went up to 98%, folks. Much of the positive sentiment, according to board officials, came from developments in the U.S.-China trade impasse, most notably President Donald Trump's halting of the most severe tariffs on May 12th. The rebound was already visible before May 12th's China-U.S. trade deal, but gained momentum afterwards. May's rebound followed 5 straight months of declines. So consumers were going down in their confidence, and now it's going up. Consumers and investors had grown sour on economic prospects amid the intensifying trade war that Trump had launched against U.S. global trading partners. However, the two sides reached a truce in early May, marking the second major walkback of Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs since he led them in April's 2nd Liberation Day announcement. Now, put this in context, okay? Why was people's confidence down? Because when Trump announced the tariffs, the media and Wall Street and everybody that was making money from shipping your jobs overseas, oh man, this is terrible. Trump's destroying it. The tariffs are terrible. They beat you. But this podcast, other podcasts, other conservative news like One America News, Newsmax, they and Real America's News with Steve Bannon and those guys, they made the case. Trump was right. He's saying, listen, we have these bad trade deals. If I use tariffs to force them to come to the table and give us better trade deals, how is that bad for America? If it gets people to move their manufacturing to the United States, how is that bad for America? You and I got it. We understand. The elites didn't want you to understand. They wanted you to be sheep and to herd you. And you aren't being herded anymore. You're not sheep. You know the facts, and here are the facts. Let me play this, because we're about individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, right? So what's more important than wages, than income? Look at this bad news. Listen, this is good news. This is awesome.
Personal income is up 0.8%. That is almost triple the expectations, and it underscores we could talk about a lot of issues, but when you look at income for the first 4 months of the year, they're powerful numbers, Joe. Up 0.6 in January, up 0.7 in February, up 0.5% last month, up 0.8 this month. This is a great 4-month start to any year. Now, with the income shooting up, and by the way, 0.8 is the strongest income month-over-month jump since May of 21, when it was 1.9. Personally,
So that's amazing. Incomes are going up month by month by month, okay? Which is why inflation isn't going up, because we're keeping inflation in check. And I told you guys last week and the week before, I've been telling you about, you should go to whitehouse.gov, okay, and subscribe to their email newsletter, because they're doing a fantastic job. As I told you, Trump isn't taking anything into chance anymore. His team is unbelievably talented. So now they're bypassing the news. You want news? Just go to whitehouse.gov and click on, there's a little thing on the side. You click and it says news, and then there's a list of stories that they put out. And they sent this newsletter out this morning, very concise. It says inflation is down 2.1% in April, lower than expected. Incomes are up, as we just showed you in that video. But the trade deficit, because of the tariffs, they were projecting that the trade deficit was going to be $162 billion. That's what they said it was going to be. Because of revenue from tariffs already, even when the deals aren't finally done and the 90 days isn't up and all that, the deficit for the month was only $87.6 billion. Now, we don't want any deficit, but in just 3 months, to cut the deficit for the month in half? Folks, this is serious stuff. Imports are down 20%. Exports are up 3.4%. That's how you balance trade. It's working. We know it's working. All of us are tuned in. But go to whitehouse.gov and click on the news link and get the newsletter. It's fantastic. And then another thing that Trump did is, again, they just don't get it. They just don't respect the man's intellect, because Trump knows that things change and you have to adjust. So he put out a thing last week that the market started panicking. He goes, the EU isn't coming to the table. They said they would come to the table. They're screwing around. I'm not happy. I'm going to raise tariffs on them by 50% on June 1st, which would have been tomorrow, the next day from today, okay? And they panicked. But guess what? The EU called. Trump delays 50% EU tariff after request from Brussels for time to make a deal. Oh, U.S. President Donald Trump said Sunday evening that he has agreed to delay additional tariffs on their European Union after receiving a call from EU chief Ursula von der Leyen requesting an extension to come to a trade deal. After President Trump branded the EU very difficult to deal with and warned that due to its intransigence, it could face a potential 50% tariff by June 1st, Brussels appears willing to negotiate. Talking to Truth Social on Sunday, the president said, I received a call today from Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Commission, requesting an extension on the June 1st deadline on the 50% tariff with respect to trade with the European Union. I agreed to the extension to July 9th. It was my privilege to do so. The Commission president said the talks will begin rapidly. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And so the left, using their psychology professors and their think tanks, came up with this thing that says that Trump is chickening out, that he announces tariffs and then he chickens out and backs off. And they tried to play this on Trump and in the press conference, and Trump just took the guy apart and said, chicken out. It's called negotiating. I didn't declare a tariff and then take it away and just leave it at that. I declared a tariff, and when they didn't come to the table, I doubled it, and they came to the table. He said, that's called negotiating. Yeah, it's called negotiating, and that's what we want. We want President Trump negotiating, because the rest of these clowns don't even understand what the game is, okay? So The other big deal that affects all of our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity is the big, beautiful deal, which passed the House last week, and now the Senate is going to try to remake it. And then once they do that, it will come for reconciliation, and then the final bill will be passed in both the House and the Senate, and then President Trump will sign it. The timetable for that is, and Johnson deserves credit, he said the House would get the bill passed by Memorial Day, and they did. The Senate is saying we will get the bill, our restructuring of the bill, done by 4th of July. I believe that will happen. They will argue about it, and then it will be passed in both houses, and Trump will sign it in August, and that's what we need. That's what we need. And so to help with that process, President Trump sent this message: make the changes they want. Trump gives Senate go ahead to take red pen to the big, beautiful bill. Now, this is important because many of you have been hearing, and if you follow us on X at TomZWTPC, TomZWTPC at X.com, you'll see I'm posting stories. And Ron Johnson and Rand Paul and lots of other people are making comments that the House bill doesn't cut enough. There's all kinds of issues. President Trump gave Senate Republicans permission to make major changes to the House passed one big beautiful bill Sunday evening, throwing a wrench in Speaker Mike Johnson's effort to persuade his upper chamber colleagues to refrain from significantly rewriting the legislation. Trump's approval of Senate Republicans making the changes they want in sweeping tax and spending bill comes as some GOP senators are warning that the package is dead on arrival without major reforms. Johnson has been urging the Senate to alter legislation as little as possible, given the delicate consensus of the House GOP crafted on the president's landmark bill, which passed the House by a narrow one-vote margin last Thursday. Okay? He said, don't mess with this. It's very delicate. I got news for you. And you know this, and you've talked to your congressman. And I've asked you to do that. And you need to keep talking to them because the left is doing what they said they were going to do. They're planting people at your House and Senate members' town halls trying to tell them that you don't like what they're doing. That's a lie, but you got to be at those town halls and you got to stand up and say, yes, get the fraud and waste out of Medicare. Get the illegals off of Social Security, okay? This is the fight you and I are in, and you've got to take action. But, you know, they basically have no choice. The House members and the senators know if they do not pass this bill and make permanent the tax cuts that Trump put in place in 2017 and add the no tax on tips and the no tax on overtime, if they don't do that, they're done. 2026 is a bloodbath. They know that. Trump said, I want the Senate and the senators to make the changes they want. He told reporters Sunday evening, it will go back to the House and we'll see if we can get them. In some cases, the changes may be something I'd agree with, to be honest. And so there's going to be changes made, hopefully much bigger spending cuts. I'm with Ron Johnson. There is absolutely no justification for not going back to the spending that the federal government did in 2019 before COVID, and then adjust it for inflation and population growth. And then that's your budget for 2025, 2026, right? No excuse for that. And so the trillions of dollars that Biden and the left threw on the Green New scam, we're still funding that. We can't. And the bond market, ladies and gentlemen, you need to realize what affects our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. The cost of money. Interest rates. Moody's downgraded our debt. We're starting to have trouble selling our debt when we just print money and spend like drunken sailors. The best thing the Senate can do is send a message that we're going to cut spending. That's the key. Talk to your senators about it. This is an ask. You're watching this podcast. This week, go on your U.S. senators' websites and say, go to their forum, call their office, call their local office. Most senators have multiple offices in your state. Go to their office and say, we support cuts to Medicaid and Medicare of the illegals and the fraud and the waste. You know, we want the 8 million people who are on Medicare, which is really Obamacare, folks. This is Obamacare. So the Tea Party started fighting 15 years ago, okay? In 2008, when Obama came in, these people who are, these states put on Medicare who are eligible to work, they're 8 million 20-year-old to 35-year-old men without children or marriages or anything who won't work. They can't get Medicare. They need to be taken off and go get a job, okay? You got to tell your senator that. This is a direct ask. And then you got to tell them, cut the spending. Cut it. We're with them. The left and the media and Wall Street wants to think, oh, no, people won't vote for you. Oh, no. We're not going to vote for you if you don't cut. Make it clear to them, okay? Make it clearer to them. All right. So the other thing that's important that we talked a lot in the last several podcasts is that President Trump's war on Harvard, right? Now, and I've talked to you about this is not just Harvard. Harvard is the top institution, leftist institution in the country. So that's why Trump's targeting them, because he's trying to destroy wokeism and the communist left's stranglehold on our universities. And so he's cutting all the money that the federal government gives to Harvard, okay? And he's going after them for DEI violations, for not enforcing the law, the federal laws, for letting these racist and these students come from overseas to be on their campus to attack Jews and attack our country, support Hamas and these other leftist tyranny groups, okay? But this week, he just kept doubling down. We'll talk later about him. He said to Harvard last week, I told you, no more foreign students. They get like 7,000 foreign students that come in and go to school at Harvard. We're not going to give them visas. Oh, you can't do that. Well, Trump tripled down on that. I'll talk to you about that in the second half of the show. But then Trump came with an idea that I really loved. He said, we're going to have $3 billion that we used to give to Harvard. We should give it to trade schools. Oh, baby, that hit me right in the heart because this program, our organization, has been fighting for the trades very, very hard for the last 10 years. So Dirty Jobs' Mike Rowe gives Harvard business billions to the American work, says, give Harvard's billions to the American working class trade schools. And so when Trump made the statement saying, I think we should give the money to trade schools, Mike Rowe, who's been the champion, he's the guy from Dirty Jobs that has been, has a scholarship for trade schools and stuff. He's been promoting this forever. So obviously the media just went crazy calling him. So he was on Fox News as President Trump's administration considers revoking billions in federal grant money from Harvard University. Television host and skilled trades advocate Mike Rowe is proposing an alternative use for the funds, a massive investment in America's trade workforce. During an appearance on Fox Business, Rowe, best known for his work on the series Dirty Jobs, laid out a vision that would redirect taxpayer dollars towards vocational education. His comments come as tensions continue to mount between the Trump administration and Harvard over the university's handling of anti-Semitism and foreign student records, with the White House threatening to strip up to $3 billion in federal support. Rowe said, if I had to choose between should Harvard get $3 billion or should trade schools, in that world, obviously the trade schools. But I think there's a bigger issue, honestly, Rowe said during the interview. Rowe offered a direct proposal on how to deploy the funding. If I were king of the world with $3 billion, I would set up the biggest scholarship fund in history of the country, specifically for the skilled trades. And I would build an infrastructure that would allow people to apply, but then be weighed and measured in a way that the taxpayers felt good about it. If we're going to give these kids a full ride to learn how to weld or how to be a plumber, let's make sure they really want to work. Common sense, baby. Common sense. This is a good thing. He argued, I would spend some of that money making a pervasive case for the jobs that actually exist. The problem, in my view right now, isn't too few Harvard grads. It's a lack of enthusiasm for trade schools because we don't talk about it. I've talked about this on this podcast years ago. Every high school has a career counselor that the kids go to and they talk about their grades and what do you want to do. Every one of those career counselors has a college degree and pushes kids to go to college. So how are you going to even know about the trades? And then we cut back on all our, the auto shops and the carpenter shops and the beauty salons and the nurses' aides and the legal aid, programs that high schools used to have. They've been decimated. We got to bring that back. We've got to bring that back. And here's why. Despite these challenges, recent data shows enrollment in trade and vocational training is on the rise. According to Wall Street Journal, vocationally focused community college enrollment increased by 16% just in 2023, the highest level recorded since the National Student Clearinghouse began tracking figures in 2018. Enrollment in construction trades rose 23%, while HVAC, vehicle maintenance, and repair programs grew by 7% during the same period. Mike Rowe understands if we're going to bring back manufacturing, right? You've got all these stories. We're covering, these people bringing, auto plants and medical, prescription drug manufacturing plants and even clothing plants and energy plants. Well, who's going to work there? And everyone goes, oh, AI. But no. Humans are going to work there too. And they're going to be good paying jobs. That's the point. To rebuild the middle class. That's the point of the tariffs. That's what Trump's doing for us that no one else would do. So he's going to bring the jobs back. And we're going to talk in a minute about the U.S. Steel deal he just did. Wow. Okay. But this is an ask. You got to talk about the trades. You got to share this story on our website with young people. Okay. And let them know that there's great opportunity for them. You got to talk to your school district and say, what are you doing to push more kids into the trades? That's where we need it. You got to talk to your state, House, and Senate and say, what kind of legislation are we doing to make trade schools get the funding that they need, right? Because that's the point. You can't bring back the manufacturing and not have any people to work there. You and I have to play a role in that, right? Each one of us, we have lots of people, thousands, tens of thousands of people watching this podcast. If every one of you just got one person to consider the trades, that would be a victory. That's a fight worth fighting. That's how you protect and defend all of our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. President Trump can do his part. We have to do our part, okay? So, the next big story is, and this is fundamental. What we just went through was the worst scandal in U.S. history, where the presidency of the United States, Donald Trump's presidency, was overthrown, and they installed someone who was completely incapable of governing, and he didn't govern, and our government was hijacked by leftists who tried to destroy our country. That's the story. Now we got to prove it. Okay? So here's part of that process. Watchdog group finds no evidence Biden knew of crucial climate EOs, demands answers on who signed with the auto pen. Power of the Future is calling on Congress to investigate the validity of former Joe Biden's signatures. A pro-energy group is renewing its calls for an investigation in over half a dozen Biden administration executive actions related to climate that it believes should be deemed null and void due to them being signed by an auto pen without any public comment from former President Joe Biden confirming his knowledge of them. Okay? The president has to sign executive orders. And even if they use an auto pen, he has to be the one who authorized that. That is seriously in doubt, and we think the evidence is going to make some of these null and void. Power to the Future, a nonprofit organization that advocates for American energy jobs, reviewed 8 Biden executive orders that it says were significant shifts in domestic energy policy, and said it found no evidence of the president speaking about any of them publicly, raising concerns that the orders were signed by AutoPen and that he was not aware of them. These are not obscure bureaucratic memos. These were foundational shifts in American energy policy, yet not once did Joe Biden speak about them publicly, Daniel Turner, founder and executive director of Power of the Future, told Fox News Digital. Executive orders reviewed by Power of the Future include an Arctic drilling ban in 2023, a 2021 executive order committing the federal government to net zero emissions by 2050, an executive order mandating clean energy AI centers, and an offshore drilling ban executive order shortly before leaving office in 2025. Okay? So I don't know if many of you guys will remember this, but before the election, and we played the video of this, Speaker Johnson talked about a meeting he had with Biden in the White House in like late 2023 about the Biden administration stopping liquefied natural gas shipments to Europe. And Speaker Johnson, who's from Louisiana, and that's where this liquefied natural gas stuff starts from, asked President Biden why he did it. And President Biden said, I didn't do that. And Speaker Johnson said, yes, you did. Oh, he said, I wouldn't do that. How's that for evidence about that being illegally done? So there's calls now for a special counsel, like the Mueller investigation of Trump about this whole, scandal. And Comer and those guys are putting up the pressure. Oversight Committee Chairman says Joe Biden and Hunter Biden may be called to testify on the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental capacity. Rightfully so. The House Oversight Committee has called in Dr. Kevin O'Connor and 4 top Biden officials to testify before the committee on Joe Biden's health scandal. Old Joe's mental capacity was obvious to all of America for years, but now that Joe Biden is gone, Congress is wanting to investigate the AutoPen scandal and what top officials knew about Joe Biden's dementia that they were trying to hide from the American public. Oversight Chairman James Comer says Joe Biden and Hunter Biden may also be dragged in to testify. Republicans in the House Oversight Committee are readying subpoenas in case former President Biden's White House physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, and 4 key staffers don't agree to a request for congressional interviews by Thursday's deadline. The committee is investigating the Biden administration the AutoPen to sign partisan executive orders, some still being challenged in court. Chairman Comer tells Fox the committee could even call in former First Lady Jill Biden, President's son Hunter, and former White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Okay? It's got to happen. And it's going to expose really horrific things. But then it can't just be exposed and written into the history books. People need to go to jail. It's illegal. You cannot sign an executive order without the president telling you to. They did. They did. It will be proven. And we need to then declare all of those null and void. Let them go to court. Let them do whatever they want. We need to take action, okay, and ask permission later. That's what we need to do. And in that same vein, same topics, I asked you to watch last week the video with Kash Patel and Maria Bartiromo and Bongino, kind of explaining what was going on with the FBI. Well, they followed up with some more stuff this week, and Bongino announced reviews of 3 unsolved mysteries: the White House cocaine issue, the SCOTUS leak of the Roe v. Wade decision before they announced it, and the January 6th pipe bombs. People were very excited about this. Bongino, a former Secret Service agent, NYPD police officer, and conservative commentator, posted on X that he and FBI Director Kash Patel had decided to either reopen or push additional resources and investigative attention to the leak of a draft of the Supreme Court opinion overturning Roe v. Wade, the discovery of cocaine in the West Wing of the White House in 2023, and the planning of pipe bombs outside the Democratic and Republican National Committee shortly before January 6th Capitol riot, according to the New York Post. Okay? This is what we want. This is what we must have. You can't clean up the reputation of the FBI until you expose what they did. And you may have heard stories that Bongino said that he and Patel became aware of a room that was hidden from them that they hadn't previously been aware of, where there were all kinds of files from the Jim Comey era, including the Russia stuff, and they were going to start releasing that information. So there's good stuff there. You may have also seen a video of Dan Bongino on Fox talking about how working for the FBI is really hurting his personal life. He doesn't get to see his wife or his children like 5 days a week. You know, those of you who are Dan Bongino fans, okay, who watched his podcast know he's a pretty emotional guy, okay? He's suffering, man. He's a real patriot. This isn't easy for him to serve our nation. It's not easy for a lot of these people. I don't care if you're Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Christy Nolan, Elon Musk, whoever. Keep them in your prayers. Pray for Dan Bongino. Pray for all of the Trump team. They're making major sacrifices. You can never forget that. You need to support them with prayer. That's a direct ask. I'm asking you to do that. I know many of you already are. Those of you who aren't, please add that to your prayer list. It's really important. So they are taking action. This is something I'm really glad to see, but I want to see action. Nellie Orr, Justice Department official's wife, perjured herself with demonstrably false Trump-Russia testimony in bombshell FBI records. The former wife of Justice Department official gave demonstrably false testimony to Congress about her involvement in the drafting and disseminating the since-debunked dossier about Donald Trump's purported collusion with Russia in 2016, according to a bombshell trove of internal FBI records released Wednesday by Senator Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley's been a warrior, man. He's been fighting this forever. Nellie Orr worked for research firm Fusion GPS when it was hired in the lead-up to the 2016 election to dig up dirt on the Trump campaign's alleged links to Russians' organized crime, but later told the House panel she did not know about the DOJ's parallel investigation into the matter. That's a lie. Her husband worked for the DOJ. They could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was no difference between Nellie Orr's and Bruce Orr's emails on the same topics. They were sharing information. She lied to Congress. The Justice Department never prosecuted Orr. In November 19th, the department did secure the conviction of Trump ally Roger Stone for lying to congressional investigation among the probe, but they never charged her or never suffered consequences for advancing the phony Trump-Russia narrative and attempting to cover it up with her involvement in the hoax, Grassley said in a statement. Yet time and again, the American justice system has been weaponized against President Trump and his associates with reckless abandon. The DOJ's inaction on Nellie Orr's criminal referral, despite the obvious incriminating evidence provided in the FBI's own analysis, undermined public trust in the rule of law, he added. So? Are they going to charge her? Are they going to finally charge her? That all doesn't matter. I don't care that you released the memos. What are we going to do about it? This is where our frustration comes, okay? And it's justified. But I do believe these things will happen. We just have to hang in there. Okay? So last week I talked about RFK Jr. and Maha, that you're gonna finally stop the rules for COVID vax being given to pregnant mothers, so babies in the womb were getting the vax, and children. And this week they did it. I want to play this short video for you. Here you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
There's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children.
We're now one step closer to realizing President Trump's promise to make America healthy again.
See, that's awesome. And, I'll give you this little side bet. So you would think that the science is clear and that everyone would go, this is great news. Oh, no. The New York Times, and again, just so you know, and you guys should do this. I get like a morning newsletter from the New York Times, not because I want to know what's in the New York Times, because I'm interested in what they have to say from a standpoint of good information. It exposes their lies. So they made this announcement, and the New York Times in their email said, oh, this is not justified. The science doesn't, do this. And they had this big thing saying, and in the report that they released, they cited studies that didn't exist. And that ended up being true. Because I think what RFK and those guys did is they used AI to create the report. And as many of you know, AI has been found to they call it hallucinations, create things that aren't true. That's why you got to check everything that AI tells you, okay? So the New York Times puts a link. They said they cited studies that didn't exist. They had a link. So I clicked on the link, and that link went to a New York Times story that says, these studies that said that, COVID shots weren't necessary for children didn't exist. But then it said, though the research that they did cite that was real does prove the case that there's no reason to give these vaccines to kids. Do you see what they did? They attacked them like they were lying intentionally. And because this story came out, they did revise the report and take those studies out because the other studies proved it. Okay? But this is how they manipulate. This is how they manipulate. We're going to find everything you said is true, but this one little thing isn't, so it's all wrong. That's how the left works. You've got to expose them for that, okay? And as he said, as Dr. Marty said, it's real simple. Other countries have done the same thing. It's not just us. We're late to the game. We should have done this 4 years ago. And I'm so happy to see it now. And you need to, anybody that's getting pregnant or is pregnant or has children, make sure they see that video. No COVID shots. Don't do it. And that's on top of this news, okay? Highly infectious new COVID strain from China that led to massive spike in hospitalizations, I'll come back to that in a second, has spread to the U.S., including New York City. Oh my, be careful, warning, warning, okay? A new, highly infectious COVID-19 strain that has led to a spike in hospitalizations in China has now been detected in the U.S., including cases in New York City, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Yeah, in China, emergency room admissions went from 7% to 16%. They've said that while this virus has been in China for like months now, they're currently having 7 deaths per week in all of China, okay? This isn't a big threat, and we're not going to make it a big threat because we've got things that we've got people now we can trust to give us right, advice like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine to fight this stuff. The new NB181 variant was first detected in the U.S. in late March and early April among international travelers arriving at airports in California, Washington State, Virginia, New York City, with additional cases reported in Ohio, Rhode Island, and Hawaii. The CDC has said there are too few cases in the U.S. to properly track in the agency's variant estimates, but experts are warning that the virus run in China shows it spreads more quickly than other dominant strains of the respiratory infection. Experts are closely tracking it, but so far there's no reason for you to take any precautions other than the things you currently do now to keep yourself healthy, to keep your immune system in good shape, okay? So, be careful. They're going to try to make more out of this than there is. And if they're serious, I'll be the first one to tell you, okay? I care about you and your health. We care about individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Yeah, prosperity is being healthy, okay? So I just want to tell you this is all in context, okay? It's all in context. Yesterday, Friday, Elon Musk said goodbye, and President Trump had a very nice meeting at his Oval Office to say, to congratulate Musk for what he did and to, really, shine the light on his achievements. And because they're trying to demonize him, and that New York Times email, okay, that I got, oh yeah, they didn't talk at all about, Musk's achievements. They talked about the fact he takes these drugs that, when he was working for Trump, he was taking these medications and things that could be addictive. Yeah. That's all they want. It's the politics of personal destruction. That's all it's about. But Trump, made it clear Musk has done amazing things. And then Musk said, this isn't the end of DOGE. This is just the beginning of DOGE. DOGE is now going to become part of government forever because they're implementing, and his team is still there working, and they're implementing changes. Okay? So he's saying, oh, I'm not going away. And he also said, I will still be an advisor to the president. I just can't give as much time. I had a 130-day task as a special government employee. That 130 days is up. I'm stepping back. I'm doing more with my companies. But President Trump calls, baby. I'm answering the call. Powerful, important. But there's an example that I want to share with you. State Department says DOGE changes will be permanent among Musk's departure. Elon Musk may no longer be the top dog at DOGE, but his reforms to the State Department will remain permanently in place, a senior agency official told Fox News Digital Thursday. As Musk's 130-day mandate as a special government employee comes to an end, the billionaire entrepreneur announced his departure from DOGE on a post on social media. During his time as head of DOGE, he helped usher in big reforms to the State Department, including an effective dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development, which was the left's piggy bank to steal your tax dollars to fund the left's war on America, right? To destroy our cities, our police, everything, okay, as we've reported. Staff reductions and the cancellation of various foreign aid programs due to lack of oversight, inefficiency, and other reasons. In addition, an indication that Musk DOJ related work in the State Department will continue was reinforced by a new recognized reorganizational effort at the Department of State announced by Secretary Marco Rubio on Thursday. The new reorganization plans are expected to cut or consolidate more than, get this, 300 of the State Department's offices and bureaus as part of a massive overhaul aimed at streamlining the department, according to agency officials. The State Department currently has about 700 independent offices, meaning the reorganization will slash or join more than 40% of its offices. We have too many GD offices, a senior State Department official told Fox News Digital. We're trying to shrink offices rather than create them. Think about that. 700 independent little fiefdoms. Boom. You're cutting it down to 400. How many duplicate staff were there in that? They each had directors. Now you don't need all of those, right? This is what DOGE has done. Permanent changes, okay? Permanent changes. And here's, a result of just looking through the DOGE lens. This is just amazing. Trump administration to pause scandal plays $2 billion jobs program. Folks, listen up to this because it's just disgusting. The Department of Labor said Thursday that it will begin a phased pause of almost $2 billion federal jobs training program that has persisted since 1964, despite a dubious record. The Job Corps, which I think many of you have heard of, houses a mix of runaway teens and 20-something ex-cons in residential campuses where 16 to 24-year-olds are paid to receive their GED diplomas and training in several trades. That sounds like a good thing, right? Let's take these people who are lost and get them their high school diploma, train them in the trades, and give them a start in life. Yeah, except like all government programs, it was a joke. For decades, there has been evidence that monetary incentives had led to fraud with contractors who get paid bonuses for recruiting students and for having positive job placement statistics, cooking the books to misrepresent post-graduation job outcomes, and tolerating criminal behavior on campus to avoid the loss of federal dollars that would come from expulsions. Contractors, including 4 large private companies, operate 99 of the Job Corps' 131 facilities, which collectively house 25,000 students. Those contracts were terminated for convenience on Thursday, with the contracts beginning to mobilize student safety to their home of record. In other words, get these kids out, send them back to their homes. We're canceling this program. Jobs Corps was created to help young adults build a pathway to a better life through education, training, and community, Labor Secretary Lori Chavez Demir Ramirez said in a statement. However, a starting number of serious incident reports and our in-depth fiscal analysis revealed the program is no longer achieving the intended outcomes the students deserve. No longer achieving. It never did achieve it since 1964. We remain committed to ensuring all participants are supported through the transition and connected with resources they need to succeed as we evaluate the program's possibilities. The Daily Wire reported in April that Jobs Corps spends up to $764,000 per graduate to get them a high school diploma and train them in a trade. That's more than an Ivy League education, okay? While participants go on to earn $17,000 annually. We spent, you and I, they took taxpayer dollars. We paid these crooks $764,000 per graduate, and if they graduated, they earned $17,000 a year. 1/3 of the students typically just simply disappear. 1/3 are expelled for serious misconduct, and the remaining third graduate for nothing. This is what we're doing to restore our government. They're stealing us blind, and these cuts need to be completely taken out. And that's what we talked about, the bill that's supposed to come this week, starting a recursion bill where Russ Vought and the budget said, we want to cut NPR, we want to cut PBS, we want to cut this program, whatever, and the House can vote on it and it's out of the budget. The Senate can vote on it with a simple majority vote and it's out. We want to start doing these bills to get rid of the fraud, waste, and abuse on a weekly basis. And once the budget's cleared, that'll be easier to do. But in the House, they ain't got nothing better to do right now. Start doing these every day, every week. Okay? Trump then did something that was really interesting. Okay? And remember, I've said to you, this is not about tweaking things. President Trump is a transitional president. We have bastardized our whole form of government. We've changed our whole society using corrupt law to force DEI and white, which is white racism, to force the trans agenda on families, to steal money from our government. Trump's trying to fix all of that. And it started with the fake news. He had to destroy them. Why? Without the propaganda, the left could not impose its ideology on Americans. Couldn't fool you. Okay, that started way back and with Obama using it most effectively, right? They lied to you. Then he said, we got to take out the deep state. And in his first term, he tried to, but they took him out. Now he's back, he's doing that. And USAID going bye-bye is all important, okay? So now he's taking out the educational wing, the propagandists at Harvard, in all educational institutions. What's the biggest challenge now? What's left and where's Trump focusing? We need to change our courts. We need to take back our courts. So Trump came out with a very strong statement this week about the Federalist Society. Trump blames Federalist Society sleazebag for recommending bad judges. This is really something special, folks. This is special. President Donald Trump blamed Leonard Leo and the Federalist Society for recommending bad judges early in his first term, linking their influence to U.S. Court of International Trade ruling that's attempting to overturn his tariff policies. President Trump blamed the Federalist Society for recommending bad judges when he had few contacts in Washington, D.C. The American First leader explained the situation on his True Social platform after the obscure U.S. Court of International Trade attempted to overturn his tariffs policies in its entirety, a rule that was just stayed hours later. Where do these judges come from? How is it possible for them to have potentially done so much damage to the United States of America? It is purely a hatred of Trump. What other reason could it be? Trump wrote. He continued, I was new to Washington. It was suggested I use the Federalist Society as a recommending source on judges. I did so openly, freely, but then realized that they were under the thumb of a real sleazebag named Leonard Leo, a bad person who, in his own way, probably hates America and obviously has his own separate ambitions. He took on this guy, Leonard Leo, directly. Trump said that Leo, who is still co-chairman of the Federalist Society, openly brags how he controls judges and even the justices of the United States Supreme Court. I hope that is not so, and I don't believe it is. The president said he was so disappointed in the Federalist Society for his bad advice on numerous judicial nominations, warning that it was the U.S. Court of International Tariffs ruling it as ultimately held it will destroy our nation. Okay? So remember, when they stole the 2020 election, what was the biggest thing? We couldn't get any judges to hear a case on the merits, and we couldn't get any attorneys to represent us. This is the destruction of what our Constitution says. The right of every American to a fair trial. The right to have a lawyer. They went and tried to disbar all of the lawyers who did try to help Trump. This is now, the Trump has got them in his gun sights. They have to go, right? You can see this picture. Trump is pointing, okay? They have to go. This is the next level. And I talked to you last week about Ed Martin saying he's going to go after the bar associations because they can't act politically, and they obviously did. So as a DOJ weaponization guy, he's going to start investigating the bar associations and taking away their legal standing. And then Pam Bondi followed up with this really important thing. Pam Bondi tells American Bar Association DOJ will no longer comply with their ratings on judicial nominees, going after the American Bar Association. The Justice Department on Thursday formally notified the American Bar Association it will no longer comply with its ratings process for judicial nominees. The result of what it argues is a biased system, and one that invariably and demonstrably favors nominees put forth by Democrat administrations. The letter sent by U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi to ABI President William Bay was previewed exclusively on Fox News. It marks the latest escalation in a protracted legal fight that Republicans have waged against the nation's largest association of legal workers. And basically, in some administrations, the ABA received notices of nominees before a nomination was not to the public. Some administrations would even decide whether to nominate an individual based on their ratings assigned by the ABI. That ends. This special treatment and first access is being revoked because the president no longer trusts in the American Bar Association. This is critical, folks. This is critical. And Justice Roberts is the guy that is destroying the U.S. legal system. If the Supreme Court doesn't come back and smack down these justices who have limited scope, who are making nationwide bans on everything Trump does, if they don't shut this down, Trump is going to shut it down. You and I are going to shut it down. Okay? And so there was an article this week that showed it's not like Trump is just doing things nobody expected him to do. Trump said, we're going to deport all 12 million people that Biden let in. What is the leftist courts doing with lawfare? Oh, no, you can't do that. The American people voted for it. The American people said, we want you to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Okay? And we are. And they're saying, oh, no, you can't. Do you understand? The courts are going against the people. If we live in a democracy, your vote should count. None of these judges give a damn about democracy. They're communists. They're trying to destroy our country. And that's why everything Obama wanted, anything Biden wanted, oh, that's fine. Anything Trump wants or Bush before him, oh, you can't have that. This has to end. Trump is fighting this fight. And you saw, oh, surprise, the Supreme Court ruled on Friday, after Trump came out attacking them, 7-2, that, oh yeah, those 500,000 illegals who got in under Obama, under Biden's plan to, give temporary relief to these people from Venezuela and all those places. Yeah, they said, well, Trump's allowed to get rid of that temporary order and deport them. Okay? It's a fight. Now, Trump isn't totally just saying, I'm going to disregard what you do, but I got news for you. If push comes to shove, that's what he's going to do, and we, the people, will be cheering him on, okay, and voting accordingly. And part of that vote will be for the House to vote in new rules for how they can throw out bad judges, like we've talked about. This whole idea of, you don't need a 60 vote majority. You can throw out bad judges with 1 vote majority. We're going to have to start doing that because these people aren't real judges. They're activists, including Ketanji Brown and Sotomayor, who just beclowned themselves with the 7-2 ruling that clearly Trump has the right to do it. They look like idiots arguing that he doesn't. This is a fight you have to watch. It really affects your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Big time. Okay, so the fight against the illegals continues. This is important. DHS releases a list of sanctuary jurisdictions that could lose federal funding. This is a big deal because what have they been doing? The left just says, oh, if we don't like what Republicans do, we just ignore it, right? And so, it's illegal. It is clear as can be. Federal government controls all immigration, all of it. Your local government has no say whatsoever. Your state has no say whatsoever. Oh, that doesn't stop the left. They just harbor illegals. They give them Social Security. In California, they're giving them Medicare and Medicaid. They're spending our money like drunken sailors, and nobody does anything about it. Yeah, until Trump. The Department of Homeland Security on May 29th released a list of so-called sanctuary jurisdictions across the nation that could be made ineligible for federal funding under executive orders by President Trump. The sanctuary city politicians are endangering Americans and our law enforcement in order to protect violent, criminal, illegal aliens. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said in a statement, "We are exposing these sanctuary politicians who harbor criminal, illegal aliens and defying federal law. President Trump and I will always put the safety of American people first. Sanctuary politicians are on notice. Comply with federal law or face the consequences." In their press release on the publication of the list, DHS stated each jurisdiction listed will receive formal notification of its noncompliance and all potential violations of federal criminal statutes. Then they have to either cure these or we're going to withhold funding. This is hundreds of billions of dollars of funding. And we're talking about whole states like California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts. Trump could say, no, you get no federal funds until you remove these policies. Folks, that's the difference between Donald Trump and every other politician you've ever known. Action. He doesn't just say it, he means it, okay? And so here's another example. We've talked about the crisis or the whole issue of our energy. Trump understands we got to start manufacturing our own stuff. We can't do that if we don't have the energy. He did the nuclear thing last week. We talked about them changing all the rules about, not taking years to greenlight a pipeline or whatever. Interior Department greenlights Utah uranium mine under expedited 14-day environmental review. The Department of Interior has approved the Velvet Wood uranium and vanadium mine in San Juan County, Utah, through an expedited environmental review and a bid to strengthen U.S. mineral security. This approval marks a turning point in how we secure American mineral future, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum said. Uranium is used in nuclear reactors and submarines and for producing tritium, which is necessary for nuclear weapons. Vanadium is used in the production of steel and titanium alloys, aerospace alloys. By streamlining the review process for critical mineral projects like Velvet Wood, we're reducing dependence on foreign adversaries and ensuring our medical, military, and energy sectors have the resources they need to thrive. This is mineral security in action. 14 days. Boom, they're digging today. They're starting to mine. That's what we have to do because we must fix this problem of not having our own resources. It's awesome. And then I'm going to wrap up the first half of the show with a big deal. Trump makes the deal of a lifetime for U.S. Steel. Many of you may have seen the rally that was held in Pittsburgh just yesterday evening, where Trump was with all the steel workers. He said, "I am proud to announce that after much consideration and negotiation, U.S. Steel will remain in America and keep its headquarters in the great city of Pittsburgh. For many years, the name United States Steel was synonymous with greatness, and now it will be again. This will be a planned partnership between United States Steel and Nippon Steel, which will create at least 70,000 jobs and add $14 billion to the U.S. economy. The bulk of the investment will occur in the next 14 months. This is the largest investment in the history of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. My tariff policies will ensure that steel will once again be forever made in America. From Pennsylvania to Arkansas and from Minnesota to Indiana, America made is back. And I will see you all at U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh on Friday, May 30th for a big rally. Congratulations to all. Now, what he did was very interesting. There's a lot of criticism about this deal, but it was a tough deal to do because Nippon Steel had been dumping steel, and Trump put tariffs on them in his first term to help save U.S. Steel. Now, Nippon got the word that Trump's not going to let us manufacture and sell steel in the United States if we don't bring the plant here. So they were willing to invest $14 billion. But Trump made a deal, but the details still aren't clear, and there's a lot of critics, where Nippon Steel is going to own the company, but it's going to stay under U.S. control, including a role where the president has veto power on anything they do. Okay? This is a big deal. This is a big deal. And it shows the American people that this is what the tariffs are all about. And this is Pennsylvania. This is a swing state. And even, Shapiro, the Democratic governor, said this is a big BFG. Big deal. And Fetterman was all over it. Senator David McCormick, a Republican from Pennsylvania, said, I applaud President Trump, Secretary Bessent, and other senior administration officials for achieving this huge victory for America and for the U.S. Steel Corporation. That's action. That's what it takes to win. And that was a big deal. President Trump negotiated a deal personally, okay, as only he can do. And I mean that. That's not just a throwaway. This man is unique in history, uniquely skilled, given gifts by God and spared by God for this moment. And we should all thank God for that, because we are in such dire straits, and I'm going to talk about international affairs coming up, that we need someone of his ability if we're going to survive. But if we do survive, and I believe we will, if we all participate, we're not just going to survive, we're going to thrive. Okay? All right. So I'm going to wrap up the first half of the show. I hope you got lots of good things in this. I did, ask you to do some things. It's up to us, not just up to Trump. It's up to us to make this all happen. So particularly share the stuff about vocational school and start acting to get people thinking about getting a vocation. We've got to create workers for those jobs that are coming in the next several years, and it starts right now. Okay? You've been watching the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and we'll be back after these short messages. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button. And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little, download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. What, something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right? Right on the front page where the yellow button was. If you click there, this is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. And it's Tom Z at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share this whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday, so if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday, and in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot.
All right, and welcome back to the second half of our podcast. In that video, I tell you how to use our website. It doesn't mention things that are important. We have this thing called a chapters player. So on our website, when you go to the podcast page, just go to wethepeopleconvention.org, right? And then click on watch the podcast. On our podcast page, it takes till Sunday usually, because I have to send our podcast in to get it done this way. There's our player that you can watch the whole thing. And then there's a player where it lists every story in the podcast. And you can just scroll down and say, well, what's that about? And click the link and start watching right there. And then you can copy the link and send it via text or email, or post it on your favorite social media to share with others. So I know, some of you watch the show end to end, and I love you for that. Some of you watch it like in two parts. Some of you just kind of pick different parts of the show. And so watch it however you want, but share the information, okay? And so, that's important. And in that little video, we talked about didn't talk about the chapters player. We're also on X, and we're also on Facebook. We the People Convention on Facebook, Tom Z WTPC on X. We're now back on YouTube. Okay, so We the People Convention is on YouTube, so you can find our videos there. We ask you to share them. But again, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And so in the first half, I asked you to talk to your senators this week and tell them, yes, we want you to get the waste and fraud out of Medicare. We want illegals out of Social Security. We want the 8 million people who can work, who are on Medicare, out and working. We want you to cut the Green Deal scam. We want you to stop funding the deep state. We will support you if you cut. We won't support you if you don't cut. Okay? That's the message. You got to do that. We talked about talking to people about the trades and sharing the Mike Rowe story, and talking to your local and state reps and your schools. What are you doing to push the trades? We need people in the trades. What are you doing to talk, you personally, to talk to people that you meet who are young and say, hey, you ever thought about going to trade school? Because there's going to be money for them to do that, and they're going to make way more money doing that than anything else. Okay? So we ask you to do certain things, and that's important. And we ask you to pray for Dan Bongino and Pat Cash Patel and Pam Bondi and everyone, Christy Nome and Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Elon Musk, all those people. They're given so much for our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. It's really important. So we're not just about talk, we're about action. That action comes from you and me, right? So please, please do that. Please take the action. Okay. So now we're going to get on with the second half of the podcast, and we're going to get into international stuff really hard to start with, because there are some things I became aware of this week that I wasn't aware of that I think you need to know about. But this is big. This is something you and I, if you've been a long time watcher of this podcast, you know I've been singing this song and screaming about this literally for 10 years. Rubio says U.S. will revoke Chinese student visas. It's about damn time. And man, it is just about damn time. This is so long overdue. It is just real simple, folks. It's not even a secret. The Chinese government makes every student spy on us in every country they go to. They don't just use it here, they use it everywhere. They will hurt your family if you don't share the research you're doing at Stanford or Harvard or MIT or whatever with the Chinese Communist Party. It's that simple. And yet we let them do that. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese students. Rubio says U.S. will be revoking Chinese student visas, those with Chinese Communist Party ties or studying in critical fields. That's all of them. All of them. I have a link on the story. There's a link right here that says, read, these are not students. These are Chinese spies at Stanford. And there's another link. Chinese students flew drones over U.S. military bases. We've been covering this. Get them the hell out of here. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Wednesday announced the U.S. states will begin revoking visas for Chinese students. The U.S. will be revoking these visas, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party. He did not disclose any additional details, but it comes a day after the Trump administration also directed U.S. embassies and consulates worldwide to pause student visas of all kinds. Okay? Well, why? Because this comes on top of him saying to Harvard, we're going to stop you from having foreign students because they're coming in and protesting against Israel. They're destroying our campuses. They won't let regular students study in the library during finals week because they're protesting the Hamas. And I'm going to address that real soon, what a lie that is. Okay? Stop this nonsense. And I tell you about that New York Times article or email I get, where I said they attacked Musk for maybe being on drugs. Didn't do any good. He's just a bad person, right? And then they went after RFK Jr. Oh, they cited a study that didn't exist. Oh, but by the way, he's right about COVID and they shouldn't give it to kids. And then the thing about revoking the Chinese visas, in 1950, we threw out a Chinese student who went on to lead the Chinese space program, and Trump's going to do that again. Are you kidding me? They're stealing everything. Look at their new sixth generation fighter jets that are direct copies of our stealth fighters. They're stealing it anyway. And the New York Times is going to say, you can't deport these. They bring $42 billion a year into the U.S. economy. They're stealing hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars of technology. And no one did anything until Trump and Rubio. Do you understand how stupid? It's not just stupid. I go back. For those who watched a long time, if you're new, if you go to wethepeopleconvention.org and you just click on Democrats China, you will find stories of how every Democrat from Feinstein to Pelosi to Booker to all of them to McConnell were bribed by the Chinese to overthrow our country. This wasn't an accident. They didn't let the spy balloon fly over the U.S. by accident. Joe Biden and Hunter Biden got millions of dollars from China. Do you see? We're at war with China.
They want to rule the world, and they can't do that unless they destroy us. And they came this freaking close because of Obama and Biden and the left and all the people who lied to you in the news media for your whole bloody life. You doubt me? Okay. I said Patel and Bongino followed up the Bartiromo thing with a couple of interviews. Yeah. Brett Baer was interviewing Kash Patel. He asked him what keeps him up at night. Yeah, listen to this short clip.
Keeps you up at night.
The CCP, for a whole host of reasons we haven't even talked about, their cyber espionage campaign, what they're doing undersea, what Russia's doing overhead in terms of space, and their cyber intrusion capabilities like Salt Typhoon. They have made wildly successful penetrations into our telecommunications infrastructure. And what they do is they suck up our information, Brett, and this is what keeps me up at night. They're playing the long game. The fentanyl production by the CCP, I firmly believe, is their way of killing tens of thousands of military-aged men and women in the United States of America. They are wiping out generations of Americans that could come here and be an FBI agent.
Do you hear what he's saying? We've been saying that here. This is not, the fentanyl's not like a business proposition. Why is all the materials for fentanyl made in China shipped to Mexico and Canada to be processed by the cartels to come here and kill our children? And no, Cash, it's not tens of thousands. It's hundreds of thousands of military age, mostly men, dead. And we did nothing. And then when Trump says, I'm going to use the Enemies Act to put tariffs on Mexico and Canada to stop the fentanyl from coming in, the leftist commie judges rule, oh, you can't do that. Fentanyl's not a national security. It's not a national security threat. What? What is more a national security threat than your biggest opponent killing hundreds of thousands of your kids every year? 100,000 of your kids every year. Let me be accurate. That's the estimates I've heard. Okay? They're killing our kids. We did nothing to stop them. Joe Biden helped them. What do you think was coming across the border with all those people? Fentanyl, drugs. They're traitors. Everyone involved with this, everyone who took Chinese money needs to be arrested. We need to have prison camps for the traitors. And oh yeah, people go, see, you guys, you're fascist. You want to be dictators. No. I want the rule of law. I want justice to be brought down on those who betrayed our nation and killed our children and destroyed their lives with trans. I'm going to talk about that later. Did everything to blow up our economy. The Green New scam is an anti-capitalist program to stop capitalism by getting rid of cheap fossil fuels. Do you see the picture? Is it coming clear? Those of you who watched me for 15 years, you know this. You understand it. For those of you who are new, understand what this is about, how it all connects. This is big. Stopping the visas. And so, they talked about Trump administration's fees, all student visas, to bolster security checks for foreign students. What a concept. We're actually going to check their social media posts before we let them in our country. They just issued a thing to all of our embassies around the world, freeze on all student visas. We want to check them out. What a concept. We would actually check out invaders before they come to our country. This is how broke we are. What a joke we are. But we had to take action now because it was killing our country, literally killing our people. That's why Trump is historic. He sees it, and he's not, the king has no clothes, and he said that. He knows that, and now he's acting accordingly with dispatch, with vigor. No time to waste. Hair on fire. So let me just take a minute, and I'm going to talk over this video because it's got subtitles, okay, which you can read, but those of you listening won't be able to hear it, okay? But the whole hoax of Gaza and the Palestinians and, the genocide of the Jews committing on these poor Palestinians. It's all garbage. It's all propaganda. It's all these students at Harvard and Columbia and all over the country who are protesting against Israel. They're bought and paid for by Hamas, okay, by Iran. How do we know that's true? Oh, because they're starving. The people in Gaza are starving. Not because of Israel, not because of the United States, because of Hamas. And here's your bloody proof, because Donald Trump just took 1 million meals and got them to the people who weren't getting them before. Watch, and I'll interpret this video for you. Here you go. We don't need to show ID to do this. All of Gaza has been here. People are talking. Hamas doesn't want you to go here. Bless the Americans. They're giving us food. Osama Hamidin is a Qatar sleeping under air conditioners with his wives and children. He tells us you should not go while forcing us to be steadfast. What steadfastness? Come take a look at the people. They're hungry. A message from the people to Hamas. Give it up and go away. You have destroyed Gaza. For God's sake, have mercy on us. Thank you, Trump. Hamas, we have come. God bless Trump. Trump feeds us while Hamas starves us. Hamas talks about resistance, weapons, and steadfastness, but look at how the people over Gaza are going to the Americans for food. Do you get that? Look at how all the people are going to the Americans for food, because every damn bit of aid that the Biden people and the Obama people, quote unquote, gave to the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, where there are no such thing as Palestinians. There is no Palestinian state. It's all a lie. There's only anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish Muslims. All throughout history, the quote unquote aid went to the leaders of Hamas, who then starved the people to control them and forced them to buy the aid that we gave to them free. Those are truths, folks. Those are truths. Trump administration, blows out the Biden. Remember, Biden built the pier. Speaking at a press conference on Thursday, Caroline Levitt touted the success of a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which it says distributed approximately 17,820 boxes totaling 1,838 meals to Gazans in the past 3 days. The aid was rolled out to Gaza for the first time in many months, and meals and food was given to hungry people thanks to President Trump, Levitt said. The president is the reason that aid went to Gaza. He got the Israelis to support the plan and keep it out of the hands of Hamas. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. And then CNN had to play this video. And folks, if you think Trump ain't real, if you want to believe the lefties, you guys, who still watch MSNBC and CNBC and NBC, ABC, read the Washington Post, where they tell you that Trump, he's the one is mentally ill. Trump can't function. They literally say this. They're literally putting this out there. That Trump's the criminal who didn't take any bribes from anybody, but Joe Biden and everybody else took bribes from China. Nothing to report there, okay? But Trump, nobody respects Trump. The world hates him, yeah? Yeah, watch this video.
Very scared of him. Yeah, they wanted...
Who?
Terrorists.
We're afraid of Trump.
Yeah, they wanted Kamala to be chosen, to be elected.
You talked politics with them?
Yeah. They wanted Kamala to be elected. When Trump became president, the way they treated us changed. For me, personally, this is what I
think
felt.
because they anticipated that a deal would come soon.
Yeah.
And that's when they started giving you more food.
Exactly. More food, treated me better, stopped cursing me, stopped spitting on me. Very scared of him.
Yeah, they were very scared of him because they know America's might. It's just that Kamala Harris would never, ever wield it for justice for the people of Gaza. Okay? Do you see the difference? You think they were afraid of Joe Biden? Why didn't they give up the hostages until Trump got involved? If there's going to be peace, it's because of Donald Trump. Because in the Middle East, and you saw the way they treated Donald Trump in the Middle East 2 weeks ago, They only respect strength. That's it. Look at Muslim culture. They respect strength. Donald Trump projects American strength. And you better thank God every day that he does, because we are in a damn dangerous world and we better be strong. So this story blindsided me, and it's going to blindside you, and you got to pay attention to this. China shadow over South Korea's elections. Steve Bannon blew me away on Tuesday because South Korea, a big ally. How many troops do we still have in South Korea? 30, 40,000 troops, right? With North Korea, the DMZ, whole thing. Yeah, China is doing what they did in the United States. Again, the proof will come. You will see when we are done investigating that when Catherine Engelbrecht at True the Vote said the Chinese had voter databases from the Pittsburgh area on their servers in China, and she told the FBI that, and instead of them stopping it, the FBI investigated her and put her in prison. That was true. They have been influencing our elections for decades. And in South Korea, they are going full throttle. It is very doubtful that the democratic forces, the people who love America in South Korea, are going to win the presidential election because the Chinese have rigged the whole process. I can't tell it accurately. You'll have to look at the Steve Bannon, piece on this. But Beijing's influence and National Election Commission corruption threatened Korean democracy. Matt Schlapp had a conversation with the president of South Korea. Can I say one thing? Let me tell you one thing I've learned when I went to South Korea. I asked the president there several times, what was this election thing? He goes, I was up in all the polls, and then the election came out, and I won by like 1%. I just couldn't believe it. So there's something wrong. Schlapp asked him, well, who runs your elections? I didn't get an answer. I asked him again, who runs your elections? I didn't get an answer. Third time, who runs your elections? He said, Huawei runs South Korean elections. Huawei is the Chinese chip company that the US and Europe and everyone has banned from having in our communications infrastructure because the chips are rigged. They're running the elections in South Korea. I don't know if you have friends from the Philippines. I do. They're scared to death that China's going to invade them. We all talk about Taiwan, but South Korea, the Philippines, China's making a move. They're going to rig this bloody election. If we lose South Korea, folks, that's going to be, what do we do with our 40,000 troops? They're doing it, right? The Chinese aren't stupid. They're not going to attack our 40,000 troops because it'd be World War III. So what are they going to do? Oh, the people voted. We want to merge with North Korea. Our State Department, our CIA, where are you guys? President Trump personally needs to speak to the people of South Korea and understand what this would mean. Serious stuff, folks. Serious stuff. On a little more positive note, Trump has been talking about Greenland, and then this story comes up. Okay, and I was like, what? If U.S., Europe don't move on Greenland's minerals, the island could partner with China, minister says. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? A Greenlandic official has raised the stakes in the contest for its minerals, suggesting that the Danish territory could turn to China if the United States and Europe do not move fast enough. Now, we were moving pretty fast. J.D. Vance was there, talking to them, Donald Trump Jr. We were moving very fast, and people say, whoa, they're not interested. Now, Greenland's Minister for Mineral Resources, Naja Danielsen, hinted at the possibility in an interview with the Financial Times published on May 27th. We want to develop our business sector and diversify it, and that requires investment from the outside, whose four-party coalition was elected in March. When prompted about China, she said that Greenland seeks to partner up with European and American partners, but if they don't show up, I think we need to look elsewhere. Greenland has zinc, gold, copper, and many other minerals, including an estimated 1.5 million tons of rare earth resources, which we've talked about we need for AI and nukes and all that. In her Financial Times interview, Danielson raised concerns about the impending expiration of a memorandum of understanding between the United States and Greenland that was inked during the first Trump administration. It concerns the country's mineral resources. When asked about that agreement, a U.S. State Department spokesman could not confirm if it would be extended. President Trump has clear and strategic location, has made it clear that Greenland is a strategic location, and we are very interested in it. But it looks like the door is open, and I hope we move towards that. They need to be a territory like Puerto Rico, like Guam or whatever. We don't have to buy it, but we should make them a territory and make that part of the deal. You want the investment? You want us to bring in the companies to do the mining and stuff? Okay, this is the deal. You leave the Danish control, and you guys vote to be an American territory. That would be great. I hope it happens. Another Marco Rubio story that this is very big. Rubio, who is this Marco Rubio? This is not the Marco Rubio who was with a gang of 7 that wanted to, bring in illegals and stuff years ago with McCain and that. This guy's become a superstar. And here's another indication, because he's just killing it. Marco Rubio planned to punish foreign censors. As many of you know, or you should know, while we have X, thanks to Elon Musk, while we've dismantled the censorship organizations in the CIA and in the federal government that Biden and the leftists, the Marxists, were using to spy on Americans, well, we're dismantling all that. In Europe, in England, and UK, in France, and Germany, they are bringing up these laws to basically try to make X and Rumble and all the conservative people, allow them to censor people. And America, you saw J.D. Vance went there and called them all out and said, it's the enemy within. You're supposed to be the world's leading democracies, and you're fighting democracy. You're attacking the people who are speaking out in Germany. We've talked about the AfD, where they call them a terrorist organization. Well, Marco Rubio took some action that I like. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced a new policy to block U.S. entry for foreign officials and their families involved with censorship of Americans or interference with U.S. tech companies. Foreigners who work to undermine the rights of Americans should not enjoy the privilege of traveling to our country, Rubio posted on X. He unveiled a sweeping policy to deny U.S. entry to foreign officials and their families. The policy, rooted in the Immigration and Nationality Act, aims to counter what Rubio describes as an expanding global censorship apparatus. The initiative builds on Rubio's actions since assuming office, including the April shutdown of the State Department's Global Engagement Center. The GEC had faced criticism for funding organizations like Britain's based Global Disinformation Index. The new visa restrictions target foreign judges, bureaucrats, regulatory officials, and other orchestrating censorship efforts. This includes those enforcing Europe's Digital Services Act, which Rubio has criticized as an overreach, compelling censorship on platforms like X and Meta and Google. Foreigners who work to undermine the rights of Americans should not enjoy the privilege of traveling to our country. Hear, hear. We are the beacon of freedom. We must defend freedom. I said that I called on President Trump to intervene in the Romanian elections, which they stole. The conservative, the Trump person in Romania lost in a very close election. Surprise, surprise. But we must defend freedom everywhere. And we weren't. And we were part of this global system, right? The World Economic Forum, to what? Rule the world under Chinese control. That's what we're fighting. Global communism. And to see Rubio take this kind of action, I think is fantastic. Okay? Because in the age of AI, folks, we're going to need all the help we can get. Okay. Speaking of AI, this freaked me out, but it shouldn't have, and it shouldn't freak you out. FBI investigates impersonation of White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. You can see her picture there for those of you watching. And Susie Wiles is President Trump's Chief of Staff, and the FBI launched an investigation into an orchestrated plot to digitally impersonate Susie Wiles.
Authorities were flagged in recent weeks after senators, governors, and even top U.S. business executives began receiving text messages and phone calls from someone claiming to be the chief of staff, according to the Wall Street Journal. None of the messages came from Wiles. FBI officials do not believe a foreign nation orchestrated the impersonations, but somebody did. The White House takes cybersecurity of all staff very seriously, and this matter continues to be investigated. Wiles, who manages Trump's presidential campaign prior to becoming chief of staff, had reportedly told people in her inner circle that her personal cell phone contacts were hacked, which gave the impersonators access to many high-profile people in the government and business. They were calling using AI to make it sound like her voice. So you were getting a phone call. Hi, it's Susie. Wiles, the president wants me to ask you this. That's AI. That's the danger of AI. How in the hell? How are you and I supposed to protect ourselves when someone who the FBI thinks is not a foreign country, but some individuals hacked the president's chief of staff's personal phone? That is totally frightening to me. And it should be totally frightening to you. In some of the text messages, people received requests that they initially believed to be official. One lawmaker, for example, was asked by the impersonator to assemble a list of individuals who could be pardoned by the president. Wow. And so that's the age of AI that's coming quickly, and you can see how serious this could be. They could have taken actions against our national interests. Frightening. I had to bring this story up because it's just too rich. Just has to be told. Harvard professor known for research on honesty fired amid data fraud accusations, right? When we talk about our elites, when we talk about Harvard University, we talk about all the woke people, how they're not what they say they are and they're not what they think they are, and they're really a bunch of idiots and immoral people. This just says it in spades. You got to love this. A Harvard University professor known for researching honesty and ethical behavior has lost her tenure after being accused of fraud. In 2023, leadership put Harvard Business School professor Francesca Gio on administrative leave after she was accused of falsifying data. Gio's research has appeared in outlets including the leftist New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and NBC News. In 2021, 3 professors and behavioral researchers with a blog site, Data Colada, began examining a number of studies Gio co-authored over a decade and shared evidence they believe proved fraudulent data with the business school. Gino was placed on unpaid administrative in June 2023 after an 18-month internal investigation found she was responsible for research misconduct, according to a $25 million lawsuit Gino filed against Harvard and Data Colada. She lost her title professorship and was removed from all teaching and duties. And now the ex-professor, who is apparently the 5th highest paid staffer at the university in 2018-2019, raking in over $1 million a year for doing research on telling the truth and honesty when she was a fraud. She shouldn't have been paid $1 million a year in the first place. And then she was a fraud, which shows you how much of a fraud Harvard University and higher education and those people really are. Great story. Share that one with people. This is an important story to me personally and something that I've been beating on you guys about forever. And I did again last week. Texas poised to enforce age verification on Apple and Google app stores. This is a big deal. They passed the legislation. Let's see. A bill that requires Apple and Alphabet, Google, to verify the age of users on their app stores could become the law this week, putting the second most populous state in the U.S. at the center of a debate over whether and how to regulate the use of smartphones by children and teenagers. Senate Bill 2420 would require app store owners to verify the age of users of a device, and if that user is below the age of 18, require parental consent to download the app or make in-app purchases. Utah was the first U.S. state to pass a similar law earlier this year, and the U.S. lawmakers have also introduced a federal bill. The Texas bill is awaiting Governor Greg Abbott's signature, which I believe he did do. He did sign the bill.
and the supermajority approval from both houses of the legislature. Another bill which has yet to pass state legislature would restrict social media apps to users over 18, which is what really must happen. So one is age verification, and then social media apps, TikTok, Facebook, X, Instagram, all that. You can't use it until you're at least age 16, because that's what the science shows is the safe age to do it. Age limits and parental consent for social media apps are one of the few areas of wide consensus in America, with a Pew Research poll in 2023 finding that 81% of Americans support requiring parental consent for children to create a social media account, and 71% support for age verification before using the app. The mental health effects of social media on children has become a growing global concern, with dozens of U.S. states suing Meta Platforms and the U.S. Surgeon General issuing an advisory calling for safeguards for children. Australia last year banned social media for children under 16, with other countries such as Norway also considering new rules. This must be done. Why we're fighting it? You know who's fighting it? Conservatives are fighting it because they're saying age verification is a violation of my rights. Well, I believe it should only be for these social media apps, and they're saying, well, no, I shouldn't have to show that I'm over age 18. But our children are being destroyed. And so, you have to be over 21, to buy a gun, right? You have to, to drink in some states 21, some it's 18, to get cigarettes. Those are rules that are important. And now we're fighting over social media because you want to be able to be anonymous on X? Well, I'm sorry. You can't do that. Why? Because you're destroying our kids and our society. Want more proof? Here's the damn proof. Here's the proof, okay? Just came out. Okay? U.S. California study finds 35% jump in depression symptoms for preteens using social media. This is May 27th. A new study released by researchers at the University of California, San Francisco have found that increased social media use among preteens is associated with a massive 35% rise in symptoms of depression. KTVU TV reports that a study conducted by researchers at UCSF has shed light on potential mental health risks associated with social media use among preteens. The study, published Wednesday in the prestigious journal JAMA and The Lancet, reveals that preteens who increase their social media use experience an average of 35% increase in symptoms of depression. Dr. Jason Nagata, a pediatrician and associate professor at UCSF, led the research that followed 12,000 9-year-olds for 4 years, assessing their social media habits and mental well-being. The study found that at the beginning of the research, the average social media time was a mere 7 minutes per day. However, by the end of the 4-year period, the children were spending an average of 73 minutes per day on social media platforms, showing the addictive nature of it. Alarmingly, the study discovered that 2/3 of the children had underage social media accounts by the age of 12, with the most popular platforms being TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram. This revelation highlights the prevalence of children circumventing the minimum age requirements of 13 set by social media companies. So they say, you've got to be 13 to do this. You got to be older than 13. Are you older than 13? Click yes. No verification. It's total garbage. The study makes a strong case for strict social media ban on children currently being considered in Texas. That will put the onus on Apple and Google to control the download of social media apps by children until they reach your appropriate age. Folks, this just has to happen. On our website, we've tried to get a bill through here in Ohio, okay? And it's been held up because they keep saying they're going to sue if we pass the bill. They're going to get a court to throw it out because you can't force everybody to have their age verified. Well, that's starting to change. You've got to keep pushing for it. Okay. If you go to wethepeopleconvention.org and search on Dr. Haidt, just search on Haidt, H-A-D-T. Okay. Haidt, H-Y-A-D-T. You search on that. Okay, and you'll see all the laws that are passing in this rate. You'll see a video explaining the damage. The science is totally clear. Totally clear. We must stop this. And I'm glad that Texas, congratulations, you guys in Texas, call your House members, call the governor, and say thank you for putting our children's safety first. That's an ask. All of us, we have thousands of you guys who are members in Texas. Call your representative and tell them thank you for protecting our children. Trump is continuing again, action, not words. Trump threatens to withhold California federal funding over transgender athlete. Okay. This again, President Trump on Tuesday threatened to strip large-scale federal funding from California if the state goes against his executive order banning transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. A man just participated in the women's track and field in California, won everything by a big margin, and they're going to let him compete. And Trump, again, this is the difference. Trump doesn't just talk, he acts. We're not going to have men and women's sports. He made that promise to you. You voted for that. Overwhelming 90% of Americans agree with that, except for lunatic leftists who hate America and hate Americans' families. Okay? So why are they doing this in California? Because it's run by leftists. Okay? And Trump is saying, okay, he says, I'm going to speak with Governor Newsom later Tuesday to find out which way he wants to go. Either you stop this or we're withholding funds. California gets $170 billion in federal funds. Think they'll stop? Yeah, so what did they do? To show you how woke and what a joke they are, the California Interscholastic Federation, which governs school sports in the state, said later on Tuesday that it had created a new pilot entry process to ensure biological female athletes won't be displaced at the state's upcoming track and field championships. Basically, the women who didn't qualify for the state tournament because the man ran and took their place, they're going to let them come to the state tournament, but they're going to let the man run against them again and beat him again. And they said, and listen what they said, the pilot process is a reasonable, respectful way to navigate a complex issue, don't you know? It's a complex issue without compromising competitive fairness. A model worth pursuing, Izzy Gordon, Newsom's director of communications, said in a statement. The governor Newsom is encouraged by this thoughtful approach. What a line of crap. We want Trump to cut funding to California. And if this is the excuse, let's do it. Okay? Let's do it. Because letting the boys beat the girls again isn't a thoughtful process, you morons, you woke joke. And people want to tell you that Newsom should be considered to be president? My God, he should have never been governor. He's a moron. He's a moron. He has no intellectual capability at all. He has no moral basis, no foundation. He can't clean Trump's shoes. He's going to be president. So I loved this. Love this. You got to take apart the institutions. You can't just say words. You got to take action. HHS urges medical providers, states to immediately revise gender dysphoria care practices. Oh, baby, am I loving this? The Department of Health and Human Services is telling healthcare providers, risk managers, and state medical boards to immediately update their treatment protocols for minors with gender dysphoria. In a letter on May 28th, the agency said that it expects federal-funded healthcare groups to follow its review that outlines the most up-to-date science to guide policies for pediatric gender dysphoria treatment. Its comprehensive review was published on May 1st and found sufficient international evidence that puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries pose significant risks, including irreversible sterilization. After releasing its review, HHS said the recommendation treatment plan is psychotherapy, citing it as a non-invasive alternative to indoctrination and surgical intervention for the treatment of pediatric gender dysphoria. So psychotherapy. Some of the other cited risks are reduced bone density and heart disease. The agency is now telling healthcare providers to no longer rely on previous discredited guidelines for pediatric gender dysphoria, arguing there is weak evidence and growing international retreat from using puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, surgeries, and the rest. Given your obligation to avoid serious harm and the findings of the review, HHS expects you promptly to make the necessary updates to your treatment protocols and training for care for children and adolescents with gender dysphoria to protect them from these harmful interventions. The review mentions 3 nations that recently revised their treatment protocols and sharply restricted access to puberty blockers, sex hormones, and surgeries. Those include the United Kingdom, Finland, and Sweden. And then here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. Just stick it right in them, okay? Healthcare providers were also instructed to cease relying on the standards of care for the health of transgender and gender diverse people published by Illinois-based nonprofit World Professional Association for Transgender Health, WAPATH, which HHS accused of being fraudulent and reflecting a clear departure from the principles of unbiased, evidence-driven clinical guideline development. HHS alleges that WAPATH suppressed systemic reviews of evidence, failed to manage conflicts of interest, and relied on legal and political considerations rather than clinical ones and science. The agency suggests that its new health protocols are instead driven by evidence-based medicine. You're done. The whole trans global agenda funded by the Chinese, go to the We the People Convention website, look it up. 2 Chinese billionaires funded the whole trans movement in the United States to destroy our families and our faith, okay, and our communities and our schools, and it was working until you and I stopped it. Now HHS has brought down the hammer. This will not be tolerated, and I guarantee you, if people still do it, they will sue them, they will defund them, they will drive these perverts, these child molesters, these sadistic people will be driven out of the medical industry, and I hope out of our country. These are horrific people that did this to children. They should be persona non grata in our country. They need psychological care. They're nuts. And then keep it coming. I hope you're enjoying the end of the show because we're going to keep on coming because you're going to love this. Pride Month support is waning as national brands ditch DEI. Every June, national brands celebrate Pride Month with colorful displays and solidarity. None of us ever wanted this. None of us wanted this. The federal government and the leftist lunatics who took it over forced companies to do this. This was extortion to try to convince you that this was normal to be abnormal. Okay? It's not normal. Again, what is abnormal? If 89% or 99 or 98% of the population are not gay, if you're gay, you're not normal. That's not a pejorative. That's a statement of statistical fact. Okay? So then you bring in the trans people who are clearly mentally diseased. We know that from Johns Hopkins studies from 50 years ago. And you try to say, oh, let's have Pride Month and celebrate all this crap with parades and things. It was extortion. Trump is ending it, okay? This year, expect fewer rainbow logos and less corporate revelry. Despite a long track record of supporting the nation's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer population, corporations are shrinking budgets and downplaying pride marketing as President Donald Trump's administration cracks down on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and transgender rights emerges as a culture war flashpoint. It isn't diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's white racism, okay? It's critical race theory. It's the destruction of American values. Normally, this time of year, our company and others are always working on pride campaigns. Last year, there was almost nothing. This year's the same, said Matt Skullrud, president of Pink Media, which helps brands reach the LGBTQ demographic. I think it's going to be a ghost town when it comes to pride promotions at the start of June. No kidding. You're going to help these companies reach the minuscule LGBTQ, gay, queer groups? Why would any industry do that? Except because they were forced to. About 2 in 5 corporations are decreasing recognition of Pride Month as executives bow to pressure from the Trump administration. How about just bow to common sense? How about bowing to the will of your customers, as Bud Light and Target found out, which I'll mention here in a second. Large corporation donors and sponsors are also pulling the support of pride parades across the country. One financial executive told Gravity Research part of the backtracking strategy involves being less visible on social media to help minimize public visibility that could trigger attention. How about not just attention? How about revulsion? The tension they want to avoid? The go woke, go broke backlash against Target and Bud Light, as well as scrutiny from anti-trans activists such as Robbie Starbuck, who has pressured companies to roll back their LGBTQ plus and DEI commitments. Yeah, no one ever wanted this. It's going away. We want patriotic parades, right? We want to celebrate good things, not destructive things. Again, this isn't prejudice. This is normalcy. Again, let me just go back and give you a little statement here. If they keep saying we're defending democracy, Trump's a threat to democracy. What is democracy? It's majority rule. That's what democracy is. That isn't prejudice. Our Constitution does more than any in history to defend the minority from the tyranny of the majority, but we've flipped it on its head. What the left did is they said, these stupid people wrote this Constitution. We're going to use it to make the minority rule the majority. That ain't democracy, is it, folks? That's what you've been living in your whole damn life until now. And now, when 81% of people say boys shouldn't be in girls' sports, they shouldn't be in girls' sports. That's democracy. And we shouldn't have pride flags flying on government buildings when 90% of people don't have anything to do with it. It's called common sense. It's called returning to values. It's called truth. And as they said in the famous movie, you can't handle the truth. Well, here's some truth that's coming to the left, the woke left at MSNBC and CNN. They are about as popular as the Black Plague. You got to admire the effort. MSNBC and CNN both deserve trophies. While they compete at while the completion at Fox has stomped on their collective necks, the two alternate reality left-wing networks have persisted. CNN and MSNBC are like youth soccer teams who went 0 for forever in May. They deserve our attention, if only to collectively lack of attention by the viewing public. Give them both pats on their heads and a slice of orange and tell them they tried their best. There's always next month. Pride Month is up next, you know. What the heck? It couldn't get worse, right? Well, with a couple of days left in May, ratings are in and the results are both predictable and ugly. In primetime programming for the month of May 2025, Fox News was up 23% with an average of 2.46 million viewers. Meanwhile, MSNBC had an average audience of 877,000 viewers, which is down 24%, and CNN raked in an average of 426,000, down 18%. Total day programming saw Fox News at an average of 1.56 million viewers, up 21%. MSNBC was down 33%, and CNN was down 24%. Overall, the most viewed cable news show of the month was The Five at Fox News, which brought an average of 3.77 million viewers. The Fox News Jesse Walters Prime Time followed close behind with 3.23 million, along with Gutfeld with 2.92. Okay? It's just real simple. No one cares what they say because they lied and people now know it. And the biggest liar of all, we played the video of Jake Tapper basically hiding Joe Biden, defending Joe Biden. He's sharp as a tack. And now he's got this book and he wants to tell you, well, we didn't know. They played us for fools. We're exposing it. You should listen to us. You should trust us. Yeah, Jake Tapper's viewership of his show is down 25%. Hey, Jake, even the people you lied to aren't buying your bull crap. Okay? That's sweet, baby. That's sweet. Okay? And I'm going to close. If all that wasn't good enough news for you, I'm going to close with this. Last week, I said, we need President Trump to ask us to be more involved. Okay? And I've asked you to be more involved in this show, to help recruit people to the trades, to talk to your senators and tell them about, we need to, cut the waste and fraud. We need to defund the deep state. We need to return to pre-COVID budget numbers. Okay? But I asked you last week, I said, they are doing this thing where you can turn in, schools who don't get rid of DEI. And then I said, boy, it'd be great if we had a way to help get rid of the 12 million illegals we want to deport. Well, our good friend Ralph from Canton, said, yeah, I think we should. I'm going to look for this. And he found this website. And this is just ice.gov. And you can see can see a video if you're listening. You go to ice.gov. And there's a little red button that says report crime. And when you click that button, it actually gives you a form to fill out.
where it says, U.S. immigration enforcement investigates more than 400 violations of criminal law, ranging from child exploitation to transnational gangs. Use this form to report suspected criminal activity. Be as specific and as detailed as possible. You are encouraged to provide additional identity details such as places of birth, countries of citizenship, any numeric identifiers. The detailed information you provide will assist our investigators. We do not provide status updates for tips. If you provide information, you can be assured it will be promptly forwarded to the responsible office in that area. And so there's just questions like what did you see? Where was this located? What was the address of this activity? I witnessed some drugs being sold. I witnessed some child trafficking or sex trafficking or whatever. And so I'll put this, but it's just ice.gov, and then click on report a crime, and you can do it. And I'll link this in the podcast page. But again, as citizens, we want to protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, and our rights, and our safety, and our community. You do that by participating. You take action, okay? And that's what we talked about in this podcast. And I hope you've enjoyed what we've covered. We've done a lot of things in this podcast. And if the most important thing you can do is tell other people about it. That's how we share it. Why? Because the more people who watch this podcast, the more people who hear our ask, the more people who act on our ask, the more we get done, the more we protect our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. If you have questions, if you have story links, videos we should maybe show, if you want, correct me if I was wrong about something. We are dedicated to the truth here. I cannot lie to you. If I lie to you, you won't watch. You'll be like MSNBC. People will stop watching. I'm dedicated to truth. I can make a mistake, but I will never lie to you. If I made a mistake, write to me. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. This podcast, many of the stories from this podcast come from you, the listeners. I couldn't possibly do the research necessary for this podcast. We do our best, but you bring stories to us that we don't see anywhere else. And all of you benefit because you see stories in this podcast you didn't see anywhere else. You just didn't see some of these stories. I hope you're glad you did. Okay? So we're going to wrap up the podcast for this week. I thank you so much for joining us. I hope you'll have a good week. I hope you will be active and engaged in rebuilding your relationships with friends and family and talking about what's good that's going on. Share the stories. We had a friend, who was complaining to us over the weekend about, Trump has gone overseas. He's talking to all these Arab companies and making all these deals and getting jets. What's he doing for the American people? She never got any news about the big, beautiful bill, no tax on tips. And she was a waitress in her life. She's not hearing the stories that you hear in this podcast. That's how the propaganda works. No president has ever done. Just share the U.S. Steel story. Thousands of jobs, good paying jobs. He's just saved the U.S. steel industry. That's America first. But they don't know it if you don't share it. Go to wethepeopleconvention.org. Use our chapters player. Share it. Watch the videos on YouTube at We the People Convention. Watch the videos on Roku. We have our own channel, We the People Convention. Share it on Rumble, but get the word out. That's how we win. That's how we protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. That's how we survive the threats from China and the globalists and the communists within us, and then thrive. We're going to survive, and then we're going to thrive. But we can't just be bystanders and just sit back and go Trump, go. We got to act. We got to make sure there's workers for those factories when they come back. You and I have to rebuild the middle class if America's ever going to be great again. Okay? All right. I hope you have a great week. I hope you're healthy. If you're not healthy, I hope you're starting to get better. God willing, we'll both be back together next week. You've been listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zalestowski. God bless all of you. God has already blessed America. See you next week.